This video is the first in a two-part series about the Casio Loopy, a delightful home console released exclusively in Japan back in 1995. In this series, I'll share details about the history and legacy of this unique system and celebrate the ongoing work that's breathing new life into the Loopy nearly 30 years after its release. These videos are intended for those who already have a fondness for or interest in the Loopy, but also as an introduction for folks who may have never encountered the Loopy before. This week, we'll be looping you in on the recent developments that are making this distinctive little console more accessible for more people than ever before. I'll talk in greater detail about the circumstances around the development of and context for the Loopy's release next time, but just to quickly get you up to speed, the Casio Loopy, alternately known as My Seal Computer, was a video game console designed for and marketed to young girls. It sold between 1995 and 1997 and retailed for 25,000 yen at the time of release, which is approximately $160 or $360 in 2023 when adjusted for inflation. The Loopy is, for all intents and purposes, a 2D only machine, with specs positioning it somewhere roughly between Nintendo's Super Famicom and the Sega Saturn from the year prior. Loopy games make great use of the large, colourful sprites, and the system can display some neat graphical tricks such as colour blending, transparency, and even limited pseudo 3D effects. The graphics capabilities of the system are perfectly tailored to the console's library, which consists of dress-up games, life sims, adventure games, and art creation suites, all of which make great use of the Loopy's broad colour palette and plentiful sprite layers. I'm getting a little off track though, as I haven't even talked about the Loopy's most unique feature yet. Occupying roughly one half of the total size of the console's main body is a color thermal printer. At the click of a button, the player can print a tiny 4cm by 3cm sticker, the contents of which varies from game to game. For many, their only reference point for thermal printers are black and white thermal receipt printers, or perhaps the Game Boy printer peripheral. While the Loopy uses the same basic principles, it is able to produce color prints through the use of a proprietary seal cartridge, which includes a roll of sticker paper and a cyan, magenta, and yellow transfer roll, with each color being burnt onto the sticker during one of 3 passes across the printhead. The process can perhaps be compared to a miniaturized risograph printer. The general reliability of the print unit, combined with the fact that the thermal color printer system doesn't rely on ink cartridges or ink ribbons, means that stickers printed today generally look as good as they would have done back in 1995, with stickers looking impressively vibrant and sharp. As the Loopy was built by Casio, it goes without saying that it has a really beautiful sound that has a sonic footprint entirely distinct from other video game contemporaries. Longtime viewers of this channel will already know how much I adore the Casio Loopy. I'm not being flippant when I say it's one of my favourite video game consoles of all time. Putting a sticker printer onto a game console so that players can instantly print out a tangible keepsake of special moments from their gaming sessions is genius. The anticipation is killing me! Okay. It's good. It's very good. I love creating something in-game and seeing the little sticker pop out from the system. The big tactile button used to separate the printed sticker from the roll goes down with a very satisfying ka-chunk, and always feels kind of magical. As I mentioned, the Loopy first launched in 1995, sometime in October to be more specific. However, the precise day it hit store shelves has never quite been nailed down, until very recently, thanks to a digital transfer of a promotional video uploaded to YouTube by Animeru02. The video, which details the system's launch lineup, closes out with an advertisement for Wanwan Aijo Monogatari and the date 10/27. With this info, it seems fairly likely that Friday, October 27th, 1995, was the console's official release, making today, as this video goes live, the 28th anniversary of its launch. Happy birthday, Loopy! This promotional video is also full of some really exciting little details, like these lovely concept illustrations never before seen online, and a unique look at some pre-release and in-development versions of Loopy games with some significant differences to the retail versions. Interestingly, a much lower quality rip of just the 1-1 TV spot had actually been online for several years, but it seems it was only recently, perhaps thanks to the additional context provided by the full promo video, that attention was paid to the included release date. The Loopy has a library of 10 games and a hardware add-on called Magical Shop, featuring its own built-in software, bringing the total software library to 11. Archives of these games have been floating around online for years. However, these collections were both incomplete and untested, as there was no way to use them on real hardware, and Loopy emulation was functionally non-existent. Thanks to an amazing group effort, I'm pleased to say that a complete and verified ROM set of all commercially released Loopy games now exists online, available via archive.org. So how was this achieved? Building upon the existing open-source cartridge reader project, Roger Braunstein created a standalone cartridge dumper for the Loopy, allowing for easy dumping and validation of ROMs. Using this cart reader, Rachel Simone Weil was then able to dump Chakura-kun no Omajinai Paradise, by far the rarest game for the system, for the very first time. Rachel is the founder of the Famicom Museum, a hybrid digital and physical space dedicated to celebrating the history of girls' electronic games and toys, and is the home to the Casio Loopy collection. Chakura-kun was manufactured in extremely limited quantities, with serial numbers for the game all within the 4-digit range, perhaps an indication that the total number produced remained within the thousands. This scarcity means the majority of even the most enthusiastic Loopy fans have never had a chance to play it. The Girl Geek did a great write-up for Retro RGB about the complete ROM set, which goes into more detail about how it all happened, and it's well worth a read. Pretty quickly, this fresh archive of ROMs became extremely useful, as just this past month, the Casio Loopy went from 0 functioning emulators to 2. There have been several previous attempts to emulate the Loopy, with examples dating back at least as far as 2018. However, each of these attempts was abandoned early in development. As of October 18th, 2023, a week ago at the time of recording, Loopy emulation support has been merged into MAME, the multi-purpose emulator framework. This remarkable achievement is thanks to the efforts of Phil Bennett, whose work on implementing Loopy emulation has been ongoing since at least April 2021. As of right now, this new Loopy driver looks set to be included in version 0.260 of MAME, which is due for release at the end of the month. But if you're eager to try it out early, you can do so right now by compiling it yourself. In addition to MAME emulation, there is also a brand new standalone emulator for Loopy called Loopy MSE, created by PSI Rockin and Noomi Dev, which, while very early in development, is looking extremely promising, and progress is being made at an incredible rate. I've been testing out this emulator since its initial 0.10 release last week, and as of the latest build, the compatibility seems about on par with MAME emulation, and even includes support for saving and loading your game. I think it's important to note that both these emulators are, however, still missing some pretty integral features. Sound emulation is not yet implemented for either MAME or Loopy MSE, the primary reason for the lack of audio being the unique sound chip utilized by Casio for the Loopy, the exact workings of which have not yet been fully reverse engineered. Additionally, the console's unique selling point, the color thermal printer, sadly isn't emulated yet either. It would be amazing to eventually have the ability to save out digital stickers as images, or maybe even have an emulator interface with a USB thermal printer to print out physical stickers without expending the increasingly scarce proprietary Loopy sticker paper. Who knows, but I'll definitely be keeping an eager eye on the development of both of these emulators. Shifting gears a little from emulation into the world of original hardware, back in 2022, a set of 2 Loopy multicarts was produced by Team Europe. These multicarts featured a fixed set of ROMs selectable via dip switches, and were missing the at the time undumped Chakura-kun. Team Europe's multicarts were only produced in very limited quantities, and the schematics for the board were never shared publicly, meaning that sadly, anyone who didn't manage to snag one during the limited window they were available was out of luck unless they owned a retail version of the Loopy game they wanted to play. However, if we fast forward to 2023, this is no longer an issue, as work on version 1.0 of the first Loopy flash cartridge, known as the Floopy drive, and headed up by Roger Braunstein, is currently entering the final QA testing stages. Importantly, the Floopy drive is compatible with the full library of Loopy games, meaning those rarer titles will now be much more accessible for the first time on real hardware. The project is entirely open source, with information about a commercially available production run for the Floopy drive forthcoming. Rather than storing games on an SD card, the Floopy drive has an integrated USB port for loading games onto the onboard flash using a nifty web interface, allowing for the transfer and backup of saves as well. I actually had the opportunity to get involved in this great project in a small way by creating a set of 3 label variants for the Floopy drive, all based on existing Loopy games with new goofy pun titles. It was so much fun designing each of these labels, and it was a real honor to be able to create something for this project. The Floopy drive also doubles as a development cartridge, an amazing first step for potential Loopy homebrew. Additionally, it features a larger capacity for ROMs and saves than any commercial Loopy game, which will mean fewer restrictions for homebrew as well. Supporting these tentative first steps into Loopy homebrew is the amazing work being conducted by Kasami, who, as well as providing invaluable support for most of the aforementioned projects, has begun building a Loopy tool collection, featuring tools, scripts, and research findings that will aid future homebrew development for the system. Some very early tests have already been carried out in this area. For example, tests in which the serial port of the Loopy's SH2 chip is communicated with via a floppy drive in dev cart mode and connected to a PC, allowing for images to be sent and displayed on the Loopy. It's going to be very exciting to see what kind of homebrew creations will be made for this surprisingly capable system. A couple of weeks ago, I attended EGX, a large gaming event in London, UK, that featured a retro gaming section. While there, I spoke briefly with one of the organisers and asked if they had a Loopy in their collection. They excitedly said they did, but as the only game they owned was 11 Ijo Monogatari, a text-heavy narrative game which, without being able to read Japanese, is not exactly pick up and play. Because of this, they'd understandably opted not to give the Loopy a sought-after slot amongst the other retro systems on display. The reason I mention this story here is because I think it really highlights the interest that exists for the Loopy amongst retro gaming enthusiasts, but sadly the scarcity of the hardware and software, the language barrier, and perhaps even some of the misconceptions that exist online about the console itself, create a significant enough barrier to entry that it's impenetrable to all but the most ardent fans. On the flip side, it demonstrates why the amazing efforts highlighted in this video will make the Loopy more visible and accessible. Funnily enough, a first draft of an English language translation of that very game, 11 Ijo Monogatari, was released back in August. Right now it exists as a translation guide hosted online, but work is underway to create a translation patch for the game, replacing the original Japanese script with the English language translation. Perhaps next year we'll see a Loopy with a translation patched copy of 11 at a retro event. On the topic of 11, I also submitted a speedrun of the game to speedrun.com. To my knowledge, this is the first ever recorded speedrun for a Casio Loopy game, and the reason I decided to do this was in the hope it would introduce the game to another new audience. So far, my world record remains sadly uncontested, but hopefully this year's developments, and perhaps even this video, will ignite a competitive spark under the next Loopy speedrunner. That is time! 1 hour, 25 minutes, and 1 second. We now have something to submit to speedrun.com. 2023 has already proven to be such a huge year for fans of the Casio Loopy, and this really feels like it's just the beginning. There was honestly so much happening that I wasn't able to cover everything in this video, including 3D printable replaceable parts for the Loopy, RGB mods, save file cheat utilities, and a lot more. Thank you so much for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and please let me know in the comments if you own a Loopy or you're interested in anything about the Casio Loopy. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Also, stay tuned for part 2, in which I'll be asking the question, why is the internet so wrong about the Loopy? I also want to take a moment to thank everybody who's ever supported me on Ko-fi. It's thanks to you that I was able to showcase as much Loopy stuff on video as I have been able to. And I also want to say a very special thank you to all Video Dojo channel members. It's thanks to you that videos like these are possible. Until next time, bye-bye!